The sirens were still echoing when I stepped out onto my own driveway. Well, what used to be my driveway. A moving truck sat parked sideways, completely blocking my car, the sidewalk, and a good portion of the damn road. It was a mistake, a wrong address, a GPS blip, something. But then I saw her. Her hair was in rollers. She had a clipboard, and the smugness on her face could sour a gallon of milk. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You're blocking my driveway?" Without even looking at me, she flipped a page on her clipboard and said, "Hey, you'll need to submit a formal complaint to the HOA, sir. We're facilitating an urgent community beautification project." I stared. "On my property." She finally looked up, her lips curled into what I can only describe as a condescending smile. "That's the thing," she said, leaning closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "You people keep forgetting this is an HOA. Governed. Street. The you people wasn't just about me being a newcomer to the neighborhood. I could feel it. It was about something else entirely." I took a deep breath and glanced across the road. My wife Lila stood with our daughter, who was clutching her birthday gift, a bicycle we were going to teach her to ride. The day had started with pancakes, streamers, and laughter. And now, this woman, this self-appointed queen of the street, was treating my property like it was her personal chessboard. And still, I tried to be civil. "I don't think you realize. Whose name is on the deed to this land," I said, a bit firmer now. "Oh, we know exactly who owns what," she chirped. "And you'll find that the HOA has easement authority in shared zones. This isn't just about you, it's about the whole community." She wasn't just blocking my driveway, she was trying to erase my place in the community before I even fully settled in. Let me rewind. 2 weeks before this fiasco, I bought the house as a gift to my family. It wasn't just any house. It sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac that my grandfather had once owned before the HOA even existed. When he passed, he left behind fragmented deeds that were forgotten, dismissed. But I didn't forget. I tracked them down. I pieced them together. I didn't just buy a house, I reclaimed family history. In fact, part of the street, including some of the sidewalk in front of Karen's house, was still legally under my name. Only I hadn't told anyone. I wanted peace. I wanted my daughter to play in the front yard without worrying about bylaws and fines. I wanted Leela to garden without getting cited for planting tomatoes instead of petunias. But HOA Karen had other plans. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the HOA president, self-elected naturally. She handed out warnings like candy and fines like thunder. The mailbox wasn't HOA approved. Fine. The fence color didn't match her earth tone vision. Double fine. Someone forgot to bring in their trash can by 9:01 a.m. Triple fine and a community email shaming, and she hated me from day one. Maybe it was because I didn't attend her mandatory welcome meeting. Maybe it was because I didn't smile when she handed me the 36-page rulebook and called it a blessing. Or maybe, just maybe, she didn't like that someone she couldn't control had moved on to her. Street, but blocking my driveway? On my daughter's birthday? That was war. Still, I held back. Because fighting an HOA isn't about yelling louder. It's about knowing exactly where to strike. The first time I met the previous homeowner, he mentioned that Karen made him install special gravel on his lawn because the community garden must sparkle. The man was in tears, a veteran, a widower, and he sold the house just to escape her. That stuck with me. So when I took over, I made sure I had every inch of documentation, every historical map, every boundary line redrawn. I smiled through her meetings. I ignored her passive-aggressive newsletters. But today, she crossed the line that she couldn't uncross. I walked back inside while the moving truck remained parked. Lila followed me. "What are you going to do?" She whispered. I opened my laptop and typed in a single command that pulled up my property overlay. Red lines, blue lines. In the thick green shaded area that made my stomach twist because it confirmed what I already knew. Half the street was mine, but proving it? That would take more than a map. It would take strategy. I sent one email, it's just one, to my attorney, who specialized in land disputes. Attached were all the deeds, the GPS overlays, and a dozen photos of Karen's violations. The fence she built that crossed into my easement, the trash bin she placed on my property, even the little HOA welcome sign right in the middle of my legal square of the street. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to make sure she never messed with another neighbor again. But then came the twist I didn't expect. That night, someone egged my house, not a random teenager. The throw was too deliberate, too practiced, and in the yolk and shell that dripped down the window, saw something taped. A warning. It was a letter from the HOA, dated the next day. A future-dated fine for obstruction of community beautification. They had already written it before, even speaking to me, before filing a report. They were creating a paper trail of fake one to bury me in bureaucracy. I should have been furious. But I was calm. Ice cold. I called my grandfather's old friend, Mr. Hallstrom. He was the original surveyor when these lots were drawn up in the 60s. He was retired now, but he remembered. He had something no one else did. The original plat maps, untouched. By HOA revisions. When I showed him Karen's fines in the egged house, he didn't say a word. Just handed me a box. This isn't just a street, he said. It's your inheritance. That hit me deep, because I hadn't just been defending property. I'd been defending pride. My family's name. The reason we moved back here in the first place, I stayed up all night scanning documents, pulling footage from my security cams, drafting a notice of cease and desist. And before dawn, placed a single orange stake in the middle of the street on the exact line where Karen's authority ended and mine began. She saw it and she snapped. You think you can intimidate me with your little flags and papers? She shouted across the street, wearing a silk robe and holding a cup that said Queen Bee. No, I said. I think the county assessor's office will do that just fine, because what she didn't know was I'd already filed a land dispute motion, and the county. They take legal boundaries very seriously, especially when someone uses public HOA funds to build fixtures on land that isn't theirs. Within 48 hours, the county confirmed receipt. Within 72, they issued a temporary injunction against Karen's HOA for making any changes to my half of the street. Karen, she lost it. She went door to door claiming I was trying to take over the neighborhood. But this time, the neighbors didn't back her. One by one, they started coming to me. Their stories. How she fined a kid for sidewalk chalk. How she threatened to tow an elderly woman's car during a power outage. How she even tried to ban Halloween decorations because they were a hazard to the community's spirit. Karen had ruled through fear. But fear doesn't work when truth shows up with paperwork and decades of legacy. And still, I didn't feel triumphant because it wasn't over yet. She wasn't going to back down. Now, Karen. And when the county's land investigator showed up with a clipboard of his own, she made sure to throw her own stack of falsified documents on top. But what she didn't count on was what I'd saved for last. A single photograph. My grandfather, holding me as a baby, standing where my driveway now sits. And behind him, the original street sign with his name before the HOA renamed it. Who do you think built this neighborhood? I whispered, holding that photo in my hand as Karen raged in front of the county officer. Watch till the end, because what happened next? It shook the entire HOA to its core. Karen was pacing in her driveway like a queen on the verge of being dethroned. Except queens didn't slam car doors and yell into Bluetooth headsets about illegitimate land claims. The county officer had barely left when she sprang into action. That same night, her HOA board gathered like vultures on her porch, clipboards out, eyes narrowed. Voices hushed but hurried. They were planning something, and I knew better than to think the law alone would stop people like Karen. HOA. Rules were one thing, but control. That was her real addiction. The next morning, my daughter's bicycle was gone. Just gone. We'd left it on the porch overnight after she finally got the hang of riding down our gentle driveway. She'd fallen once, cried a little, then got back up and kept pedaling until the sunset painted the street gold. That bike wasn't just a gift. It was a milestone, and now it was missing. We searched the yard, the garage, even checked with a few kind neighbors. Nothing later. I checked the footage. A man in an HOA maintenance vest, 3:13 a.m., hood up. He rolled it quietly into a truck with no plates. They were escalating. This wasn't about boundaries anymore. This was about breaking us. But something changed that day, because when I showed the footage to a neighbor named Malcolm, a soft-spoken retired firefighter who'd lived there for 30 years, he didn't just nod. He opened his own binder. It was full of complaints. Over 24. It's all dismissed or resolved internally. His rose bushes, uprooted by HOA landscapers after he refused to pay for a new mailbox. His granddaughter's swing set, disassembled without warning. His dog, reported to animal control 3 separate times for excessive happiness. He looked me in the eye and said, I kept quiet because I thought I was alone. He wasn't. I printed flyers, not confrontational, just informational. Do you know where your property line ends? Do you know what you're really paying HOA fees for? Within 2 days, I had 13 calls. Within a week, 22 families had quietly come to me, each with their own story. We weren't a neighborhood. We were a battlefield. And Karen was the self-proclaimed general. Then came the breaking point. I received a letter, certified mail. It wasn't a fine. It wasn't even from the HOA. It was from Karen's personal attorney. A cease and desist, alleging public defamation, harassment, and intentional destabilization of neighborhood harmony. Intentional destabilization. That's how they described my daughter crying over her stolen bike. I showed Leela the letter. And for the first time since this started, she didn't just look angry, she looked tired. Tired in that way only mothers get when the home stops feeling safe. I didn't sign up for a war, she said quietly. I just wanted a home where our daughter could ride her bike. That hit hard. Because she wasn't wrong. Neither was I. So I made a choice that night. I held a barbecue. Not a meeting. No clipboards, no agenda. Just burgers, soda, lawn chairs. It's old school. And people came. They brought potato salad and folding chairs and decades of HOA horror stories. One man cried about being fined for leaving a wreath on his door past Christmas. Another whispered about being threatened with eviction for installing solar panels. Karen. She stood across the street, arms folded, phone out, taking photos like we were criminals conspiring. But she didn't come over, because deep down, she knew. The tide had turned, but it didn't stop her from trying one last desperate move. The following Monday, received notice that my driveway access would be revoked for street maintenance. That's right, they were repairing the road that I legally owned, and claiming I had no right to use it. I filed an emergency injunction. And this time, I didn't go alone. Malcolm came with me. And so did 7 other neighbors. We brought documents, photos, videos, and when the judge saw the footage of the bike theft and the falsified fines, he didn't just issue an order, he ordered a full audit of the HOA. Karen lost it. She called an emergency. HOA meeting that night, closed door. Security at the front. Residents were turned away, but someone inside was filming. And when that footage hit social media, it spread like wildfire. Karen standing at a podium screaming about cleansing the neighborhood of anarchists. Her exact words, cleansing. That word didn't go over well, especially with our diverse, proud neighborhood. People started talking. The local news picked it up. The story ran under the headline, HOA president faces backlash for alleged land takeover. And racially charged comments? I didn't call the press. They found me and I didn't sugarcoat it. My family's legacy was here before the HOA existed. We own part of this street, and we're not going anywhere. I didn't expect what came next. An old man showed up on my doorstep the next day with a cane and a notebook. You're Thomas's grandson, aren't you? He asked. Yeah, I said. He handed me a box inside. Letters, photos, handwritten community plans. My grandfather's dreams for the neighborhood, plans he shared with early residents, including one from 1969, signed by Karen's own father welcoming him as a co-founder of the block. That's right, Karen's dad and my grandfather built this place together. She'd been fighting a ghost, trying to erase the very roots she came from. I knew then. This wasn't just legal anymore, this was personal. And not just for me, for her too. So I wrote her a letter. Hand-delivered it. It didn't threaten her. It invited her to sit, to talk. 1 hour. Public library. Neutral ground. She didn't show. But her vice president did, and he brought a confession. The fines. He said, half of them never went through any board vote. Karen just issued them on her own. We didn't stop her because we were scared. He handed me a folder, internal emails, proof. And just like that, the dominoes fell. I filed a formal motion with the county to revoke the HOA's governing status on my land. And when the board got wind of it, 2 more members resigned. It was happening. The truth was louder than the fines, stronger than the intimidation, and deeper than any sidewalk crack Karen could claim as her own. And yet, there was still one thing left to do. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is not destroying someone, but letting them watch you rise higher than they ever expected. So I did one last thing. I hosted a block party. Not a protest, not a press event. It's just laughter, food, music, real community. And in the middle of it, my daughter's new bike. Red, with glitter tassels. Paid for by donations from neighbors who chipped in without me even asking. She rode it down the street like it was a victory parade, and it was. But there's more. Because Karen, she's not done yet, and what she does next will shake everything. To its core, watch till the end. Because the next chapter is the one she never saw coming. The morning after the block party, I stepped outside with my coffee and felt something unfamiliar dash quiet. No buzzing HOA drones flying overhead taking pictures. No angry letters shoved into the mailbox. No Karen pacing in her robe, barking into her headset. Just kids playing, wind moving through the trees, and my daughter drawing on the driveway with chalk that hadn't been washed away. But quiet in this neighborhood. It never lasted. By noon, I got the call. My lawyer's voice was tight. Thomas, there's been a motion filed against you. Karen's suing for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and illegal seizure of community assets. She's suing me? She's suing you personally? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Because lawsuits don't have to be true to hurt you. They just have to exist. My stomach sank. Lila was in the kitchen when I walked in. She took one look at my face and said, "What now?" I handed her the phone. She didn't say anything at first, just listened. What does she even mean by seizure of community assets? I knew exactly what she meant. She meant the portion of the street I legally owned. The easement where the HOA planted their flags and installed their little community bulletin board that now looked more like a relic of a failed regime. Karen had crossed the final line. This wasn't about fines or driveways anymore. This was about pride, control, ego. She was watching the empire she built crumble, and she was going to drag us all into the rubble with her. And still, some part of me wanted to believe she'd stop until the fire. It happened at night. Not a big one. Just enough to send black smoke curling into the air. Enough to set off a neighbor's security system. Enough to burn the side of my fence, and just enough to char the corner of that deed box my grandfather, his friend, had given me. Coincidence? What the fire chief said could be a faulty outdoor lamp, he told me. Weather's been dry, but I checked the footage. There was a flash of a figure-dark hoodie, gloves sprinting away. Too fast to ID, too deliberate to ignore. When I showed the footage to the officer on scene, he sighed. Look, unless someone confesses, or we catch them in the act, it's circumstantial. Do you have any reason to believe someone would do this? On purpose? I stared at him. Yeah, just a few dozen. But saying Karen's name, that wouldn't help. She was too smart to get caught herself. She let others do her dirty work. People who owed her favors, or feared her more than the consequences. Lila put her foot down that night. No more waiting. No more playing defense. She tried to burn our lives down literally. She was right, so I filed my own lawsuit, not just for trespassing or harassment. I filed for malicious prosecution, fraud, and attempted property destruction.
I listed.
Piece of evidence. Every neighbor's sworn statement. Every dollar spent repairing the damage. and I requested a temporary restraining order against Karen and any HOA official acting on her behalf. But that wasn't the part that hit the hardest. The part that truly shattered me came from my daughter. She came downstairs the next morning, holding a drawing, a house, a son, a bike, and a big woman with a red face scribbled over with black crayon. "That's the lady who doesn't like us," she said softly. "She scares me." Kids know. They always know. That's when I stopped treating it like a neighborly feud and started treating it like a battle for my family's peace. And that meant digging deeper than Karen ever imagined. I went back through public records, decades of HOA filings, tax documents, contractor receipts. I even hired a private investigator to look into the association's finances. And what he found was a bombshell. Karen had been funneling HOA funds money collected from residents into a consulting firm that didn't exist. $11,000 over 2 years. The firm was registered under her cousin's name. No services rendered, no invoices. It's just checks cashed and silence bought. It wasn't just HOA overreach now. It was embezzlement. I sat with the evidence for hours. I could end her. Not just as HOA president, but as a member of this community, even as a free woman. And that thought, it gave me pause, because somewhere in the ashes of that burned fence and those red-faced letters, I remembered something Karen's VP had said when he resigned. She wasn't always like this. After her husband died, the HOA gave her purpose. It gave her control when everything else was spinning. And she started mistaking fear for respect. But grief doesn't excuse fire. Pain doesn't justify destruction. So I made my choice. I took everything I had and went to the county attorney. They reviewed it, quietly, carefully, and a week later, Karen was served. Not just with a restraining order, but with a full-blown investigation notice. Fraud, misuse of community funds, civil misconduct. And when the notice came, she didn't scream, she didn't pace, she disappeared. No calls, no clipboards, no angry newsletters, just silence. And that silence, it scared me more than her shouting ever did. Because people like Karen, they don't go down quietly. The day of the emergency hearing, I stood outside the courthouse in a suit I hadn't worn in 5 years. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. This wasn't just a land dispute anymore. This was legacy. My grandfather's name. My daughter's future. My home. Karen showed up 20 minutes late. Sunglasses on, lawyer in tow, flanked by 2 remaining board members. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't even look at the judge. But the judge, she looked at all of us, reviewed every file, every complaint, every photograph. And when she spoke, the courtroom went still. I have reviewed the documentation, the testimonies, and the evidence of retaliatory behavior. I find sufficient grounds to impose a temporary injunction on the OA's authority over Mr. Hale's property and immediate surroundings. Furthermore, a formal investigation into alleged financial misconduct is warranted. Karen didn't flinch, but her fingers curled so tightly around her pen, I thought it might snap. When we walked outside, the cameras were already waiting. I didn't speak to them, but Malcolm did. He raised his voice and said, "This neighborhood isn't about fines and fences. It's about people." And we forgot that, but not anymore. And still, I couldn't feel joy because it wasn't over. The damage Karen had done ran deep. She'd poisoned trust, turned neighbors against each other, weaponized community spirit until no one knew what belonging felt like anymore. But that's the thing about fires. Sometimes what burns down clears space for something better, and yet I still couldn't shake the feeling. Karen wasn't finished. Not yet. That night, I found another envelope on my doorstep. No name, just a single sheet of paper. A photo. An old black and white. Picture Karen's father, my grandfather, standing together, smiling behind them. Street sign that read, Willow Creek, Future Home of Hope. and a note in Karen's handwriting. You think this street belongs to you, but it belonged to us both, till your family sold us out. I sat with that photo for hours because for the first time, I wondered what she meant. Was there more to the past than I knew? Was this just revenge? Was it retribution? And what came next? It wouldn't be legal. It would be personal. She was coming back. It's not with lawsuits, it's not with fines, but with secrets. And if I wasn't careful, she'd tear everything apart. Watch till the end, because the truth, it doesn't just live in land. Deeds in courtrooms. Sometimes it hides in the bones of a neighborhood. In the final chapter, it's the one we buried years ago. The photo haunted me. Karen's father and mine, shoulder to shoulder, grinning beneath that wooden sign, Future Home of Hope. I'd never seen it before, never even heard the phrase. And that message scribbled on the back. You think this? Street belongs to you, but it belonged to us both, until your family sold us out. It sat like a stone in my chest. All this time I thought I understood what I was fighting for. My property, my peace, my family's name. But what if there was a layer beneath it all? A wound older than Karen's power trip and deeper than any property line? I spent the night digging through boxes in the attic. Old paperwork contracts? A dusty briefcase with a cracked leather handle that had belonged to my grandfather. Inside were business licenses, receipts, photos, and one letter, folded 3 times, faded ink, yellowed edges. It was addressed to Edmund Garrett, Karen's father. It was written by my grandfather, Ed. I can't go through with it. Not like this. The county offered twice what we thought. You know what that means? If we sign, they pave, and the neighborhood becomes theirs. It's not ours. I tried to explain this to Hal Sr., but he won't listen. Please, I need you to back out with me. If we do this, they'll own the street. The home's us. Don't let this dream turn into concrete. Thomas, my breath caught, so my grandfather had fought for this place. But someone else, someone in our own family had signed it away anyway. Someone whose name I'd never seen in the records before. Hallie Sinyo, my great-uncle, my grandfather's brother. The very man who later cashed out and moved west, leaving behind fractured deeds and broken trust. It was him who sold the original stake to the developers. He was the reason the HOA was even able to form. Karen had been right. Our family did betray. But my grandfather hadn't. He had tried to stop it, and that changed everything. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted the truth. So I showed up on Karen's porch. No camera, no clipboard, just the letter. It's just the photo. When she opened the door, she looked tired, smaller somehow. She finally spoke, was just above a whisper. I should slam this in your face. You could, I said. I think you need to read this first. She didn't take it, not right away, but she stepped aside and let me in. That living room I once imagined was full of HOA blueprints and chaos. Was empty, sparse, quiet. One framed photo of her father sat above the mantel. She finally sat. I handed her the letter. Her eyes scanned it slowly. Like each word peeled open, a wound she thought had long scarred over. I never saw this, she said. I thought your family was just greedy. Thought they left us behind? They didn't. Not all of them. She looked up at me. And for the first time, her eyes weren't full of fury. They were full of grief. My dad worked 3 jobs after that sale, she said. He thought they'd build schools, parks, that they'd keep their word. Well, all they built was pavement and politics. And then the HOA came. And he joined them, I said, because he thought it would give us a say again. He died thinking we still had some control over what this place became. And you tried to carry that torch. No, I tried to carry him. She looked away. And somewhere along the line, I turned into someone he wouldn't have recognized. We sat in silence for a long moment. 2 people on opposite ends of a street finally meeting in the middle. I'm not asking you to forgive everything, I said. But we can't rebuild anything if we keep setting fires. Her hands trembled. Do you really own half the street? Yes. She nodded. then help me fix it. I was stunned. Karen Garrett, the HOA tyrant, asking for help, she meant. And over the next month, something unbelievable happened. The HOA was dissolved, voluntarily, with Karen's resignation. Remaining board members stepped down. New bylaws were passed. Community elections were held for a neighborhood council, not a controlling board. No more fines. No more secret votes. No more late-night beautification projects. And guess who nominated me for council chair? Karen. Even showed up at our next block event, not in heels or with a clipboard, but in sneakers and a plain tee, handing out iced tea and smiling for real. Not everyone trusted her yet. Some never would. But she didn't expect to be loved anymore. She just wanted to be better. One day she pulled me aside. She handed me a small velvet box. "This was my dad's," she said. "He carried it every time he walked the street with your grandfather." Inside was a compass, rusty, worn. The glass cracked. "Now it's yours," she said, "because you didn't just fight for your driveway. You fought for all of us, even me." I didn't know what to say, but my daughter, watching from the porch, yelled, "Daddy, come see what I drew." I turned and smiled, 'cause for once, the street felt safe, whole, like the kind of place my grandfather dreamed of. She was drawing. Our family. Our house. Karen too, no black crayon this time. Just color. Just healing. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Lila took my hand and whispered, "You didn't just defend a legacy. You restored it." And that night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. But not because the war was won, because the street was finally quiet. Not silent like fear, quiet like peace. To everyone watching, let this be more than just a story about HOA madness or land deeds. Let it be a reminder. Don't be afraid to stand up for what's right. Even when the world tells you to sit down, don't let bullies write your legacy. And never assume the villain doesn't have their own buried pain, because sometimes healing a neighborhood starts with listening. If you made it this far, you stayed for the truth. And I hope, wherever you are, you find your own piece of street to protect and the courage to do it with honor.